The Akademia is one of the most important places in Metaphor Refantazio. It is used to activate new archetypes, strengthen existing ones, and inherit skills from one archetype onto other ones, among other things. But what would happen if we just completely ignore Mora and his cat and go through the game without ever spending any mag at all? Today we're going to find out. Before we head into the run, let's quickly go through the rules. The most important one being that we obviously are not allowed to use any of the Akademia's functions. We will go into more detail later on, but this basically means that each character will be stuck with their default archetype and skill set. We also ban the Sublime Spoonful recipe, as it gives you 4 turn icons in combat and can be spammed infinitely, basically giving you an unlimited amount of turns, so for the sake of keeping this somewhat fair, those won't be allowed either. We are playing the game on hard difficulty since Regicide is New Game Plus only, and speaking of which, just like in every other challenge, we ban it. I'm writing this as I go through the run, so at this point I have no idea what kind of troubles we're going to run into, but only one way to find out. Let's not waste any more time and get going. We start the game, choose the difficulty, and then go through the opening cutscenes. Until we unlock the Akademia, this is basically a regular casual playthrough for now. The only thing I want to mention here is that we choose a very specific answer during the recruitment center interview. By selecting I've got a sharp mind, we start out with 7 magic instead of 5, while only having 3 strength. With the protagonist being locked into the Seeker job pretty much the entire game, I decided to go for a magic build since the archetype's strongest attack is Cyclo, a medium wind magic attack. Not only that, but by getting igniters down the line, we have a decent selection of elemental attacks to use in order to generate press turns, but more on that when we get there. We also get to name our protagonist here, and since we're boycotting the Akademia, Illiterate felt like an appropriate name for such a challenge. We go through the northern border front, awaken to our first and only archetype, and then go through the first boss fight against Homo Gorlio. Since this is still practically a casual playthrough at this point, we don't need to go into further details. Attack the boss with Psych, have Gallica take care of the apples, and then just finish off the boss a couple of turns later. Grios joins the party, and we make our way to the Nord Mines in order to get back to the city. Stroll awakens to his first and only archetype as well, and we have to go through Captain Klinger next. Just like before, we are still right in the middle of a regular playthrough, so this battle is as always. We take care of the 2 soldiers, and then just focus our attacks on the boss until he's down a couple of turns later. After the battle, we also get our first and only mandatory trip to the Akademia, where we get the tutorial on how to unlock and activate new archetypes. Unfortunately, Grios is the only character where such a thing is mandatory to do, so while we can choose an archetype for him, everybody else will be stuck with their defaults. For Grios itself, it doesn't really matter what we choose because he will be gone soon anyways, but since I wanted to battle the dragon in the mines, I figured going with Mage is probably the best option for this segment. We pat the cat on our way out, grab new weapons for the party, and then continue progressing through the mines. The majority of the enemies are not a big issue, though the Sandworm especially can be nasty if you get ambushed, and we actually get our first game over very early into the challenge. We battle the next boss with Homoful Kilo, who is weak to ice attacks. While we do have a couple of ice chunks as items, we mostly want to save those for the upcoming dragon battle, so we usually attack with physical attacks while Grios tries to generate press turns with Bliss. Considering this is still somewhat of a tutorial boss battle, there isn't much to mention about this fight again, and after a while the enemy is down, and we continue on. By the time we reach the dragon area, the party is already at level 8, which isn't really overleveled by any means, but should be enough to clear the dragon fight, so we head right into it. And to say that this one is annoying is probably an understatement. We do decent damage with Grios hitting the enemy's ice weakness, as well as with Stroll's Swipe Slash. Protagonist will either pass his turn, throw an ice chunk, or just guard since the dragon loves to spam Fireball, and with the Seeker having a fire weakness, this is basically a guaranteed wipe if it hits too often. Unfortunately, Protagonist is also the only character in our party with a healing spell, so more often than not, we don't get the chance to defend and are basically defenseless if the boss decides to Fireball him. A double scratch onto the same character also has a decent chance to wipe them, and at this point we barely have any revival items, so this is usually an instant reset as well. It took a couple of attempts, but eventually we ran into a pattern where we got rather lucky with the boss's attacks and are able to take the dragon down. The dragon's indignation we get as a reward is a pretty nice weapon for the warrior early on. Once we purify it at the church, it will also gain an additional fire attack attribute, which comes in quite handy against a lot of enemies in the first major dungeon later on, which is why I really wanted to battle the dragon already. Once we reach the city, Grios gets wiped trying to assassinate Louis, and we have to take care of a couple of undeads next, which are quickly taken care of. Hulkenberg awakes to her archetype, and we have to battle undead Grios next. Since this is another tutorial battle, there isn't much to talk about the battle itself. What is more interesting is that we now unlock synthesis skills. We don't really have a lot of variety when it comes to coverage on our party's default archetypes, but with the synthesis skills, we get quite a few options that also includes buffs and debuffs, as we get access to Martira and Flying Guard Thrust from Hulkenberg, which comes with an additional defense debuff on the enemy. Only once we have taken care of Grios, the game basically starts and we get to spend our time freely. Before going back into the Cathedral though, we want to do a couple of things first. We upgrade our equipment as best as we can and then go to work on our wisdom. Like mentioned earlier, we want to purify Stroll's weapon, but in order to do that, we need to get wisdom to rank 2 first. Luckily this is accomplished rather quickly thanks to some side quests, and once we have purified the sword, we are ready to head into the first major dungeon. The Cathedral is one of the longer dungeons in the game, and we don't really have any way to regenerate MP just yet, so we usually try to beat the enemies on the way using only regular attacks to conserve as much MP as possible. Another important thing to mention here is that the Mad Watchdogs can drop Fire Fangs as their rare drop. Those deal 150 AoE fire damage, which is huge for this portion of the game, so we spend quite a bit farming them early in order to build a small stock of those. We are not going to be able to fully complete the entire dungeon within a single day, but I do want to make it all the way to the end so we can come back on the second day fully healed and ready to take down the boss. We meet Katharina and unlock the Breaker archetype, which is practically useless, and then continue on just like before. Once we get to the second Magla Hollow, we have basically unlocked our big grinding route for now, where we travel back to the first one, beat all Mad Watchdogs in hopes of getting Firefang drops on the way, and then start all over again. In the beginning, we still have to beat them the regular way, but once we reach level 13, they get weak enough for the party to wipe them on the overworld, which makes grinding quite a bit faster. Unfortunately, the drop rate for Firefangs doesn't seem to be very high, so it can take quite a while until we build a somewhat decent stock to continue on in the dungeon. The passive leveling also has the advantage that we are strong enough to wipe a lot of enemies in the next section on the overworld, saving additional MP since we don't have to battle them. Things get a little trickier once we get to the Skull Soldiers though. Those are rather tanky and only weak to light, something that we can only cover via synthesis skills. For the first couple of fights, we can still make it through with the few Firefangs we got remaining, but sooner than later, we have to start using our regular skills in order to get through the battles. Still, we have very little issues overall, and it's only a bit until we get to the first mini-boss battle against the white-clad soldier, who is accompanied by a couple of undeads. We try to take out the ads first, while Hulkenberg goes into the back row and tries to draw enemy attacks in to mitigate the incoming damage. This works pretty well, and once the captain is the last enemy remaining, we can easily take care of him with jump thrust from Hulkenberg. And while this battle was not that bad overall, we lost a lot of MP on the party, so we have to be very careful going forward if we want to make it all the way to the end in a single day. After grinding some more Firefangs, we are luckily able to once again wipe most enemies on the overworld, so this is already a huge help. The next mini-boss fight is against a set of Spectos, and this one luckily is completely free, as we just throw 3 Firefangs and are able to beat the encounter before they get a single attack in. Shortly after, we have another fight against 3 captains coming up, and since we are really low on MP on the majority of the party, we once again work with Firefangs, while Hulkenberg again draws the enemy's attention to mitigate the incoming damage. A few turns later, we are already done again and continue on, though we're getting to the point where almost the entire party is out of MP. I was shortly thinking of just retreating and coming back on the next day, but at this point we don't really have that much dungeon left, so wanted to try and pull through to the end. Because of this, we once again go back to the beginning of the Cathedral in order to farm some more Firefangs. I'll admit, this is incredibly annoying, and we would have a much easier time if we had access to the mage shop, but we already grinded so much that it doesn't really make a difference at this point any longer. Another thing I would like to mention is that the entire party has maxed out their archetype already, so the only way to gain additional stats at this point is by leveling up, since this is the furthest we can take them when it comes to classes. We wiped the last couple of stronger soldiers with some more fire fangs, and this brings us to the end of the dungeon, so we actually made it all the way to the boss in a single day. Obviously, we are in no condition to head into the first major boss fight with no MP, so we need to come back another day, though before we do that, we head back into the first area for the final time in order to, you might have guessed it, grab some more fire fangs. Once we're finally done grinding, we retreat and get ready for the first major boss battle. I wanted to purify the equipment we found at the church, but after seeing that it's only weapons for archetypes we won't get access to anyways, I decided that I'd rather save my blast waters for other equipment. We sell our loot, appraise the equipment, stock up on items, and then head to Brigitte to complete the side quest for her. We should easily wipe most of the enemies here with the experience we gained in the Cathedral, and if we gain another level or two during this, it will certainly help against the upcoming boss as well. I was actually not sure whether to even cover the side quests in this video, but since Metaphor's main quest isn't all too long, I figured it probably wouldn't hurt to talk about the side stuff as well, though we'll try to keep it short. The majority of random enemies are rather simple, and the boss of the area is not a problem either. It is weak to pierce attacks, so we can once again use Jump Slash to not only generate additional press turns, but also decrease the enemy's defense while we are at it. The Slam Shatter attack towards the end got the party dangerously low, but luckily the boss was already down on the following turn, and while we only got a single level in here, every bit helps. We talked to Brigitte to not only complete the request, but also to unlock her as a new follower. One might think that increasing follower ranks in this challenge is useless, considering we can't use any of their archetypes anyways, but the majority of them also come with useful passive perks like new items in certain shops, reduced vendor prices, increased experience from battle, and many more, so we'll try to still rank up most of them. On the following day, it's finally time to head back into the Cathedral and now face the first major boss of the game, starting off with Sorba. Sorba is neutral to everything, so we start the battle by increasing the party's attack, while using shield arts to decrease the boss's accuracy. Sorba will then start to summon corpses, and this is what makes the battle pretty easy. The undeads are weak to both fire and light, and if you remember, we grinded a lot of fire fangs early on, so by throwing those, we can not only hit all enemies, we also generate additional press turns that way. It's literally only 3 turns, and Sorba is already down again. This was definitely quite a bit easier than I expected, though to be fair, the fire fangs made this fight almost entirely free. As most of you may know, however, this was only part 1, as we still have to go through the battle against Homo Avades. Before we can attack the heart, we need to destroy the shell first, which is weak to strike attacks, so after buffing our attack with Martira, we throw out a shield arts for the weakness hit, and are able to one-turn the shell. We managed to get the heart down to almost half HP on the first cycle, and after getting rid of the assailants in the shell, we destroy it again on the following turn, get some more damage in, and then beat the enemy and finish the fight without ever getting hit a single time in the entire battle. Thanks to the big amounts of fire fang grinding we have done, we ended up being quite a bit overleveled and absolutely annihilated the boss, so we're off to a good start, but I am sure this is not going to last for very long. With that, we got some downtime now before the story progresses. We kick off the first couple of followers on both the party and NPCs, and then head into the desert for the next side quest against Man-Eater Manchula. This one nulls fire, so Stroll's basic attack is entirely useless here, but luckily it is weak to strike, so we can generate press turns using both Horse-Strong Carnage and Shield Arts. Only 2 turns later, we are already done and continue spending our free time. During bad weather, we head to the mag broker to get some more money. Since we're not allowed to use any of the Akademia's functions anyways, we don't have a need for mag at all in this challenge, so we can safely convert the majority of it into money. Since we have unlocked Brigitte's follower link earlier, we can now buy igniters at her shop, though they are still rather expensive, so for now we will hold off on most of them. Once the story continues, the tournament for the throne gets announced, and we get access to a first version of the Gauntlet Runner and head to Martira next. Having access to the Gauntlet Runner now, we will check the pantry daily for cooking ingredients. We won't start cooking until we get to Maria's rank 4 later on in order to save time, but it's definitely not a bad idea to start stocking up on items early on, especially gauntlet shrooms, since this is the only place where you can get them. As for time management on the Gauntlet Runner, we mostly get our royal virtues up by either reading a book or hanging out with our party members during evenings. On idle days, we make sure to make a trip to the toilet for some free luck stats. We also run into Gideon for the first time, who we can't damage since he's protected by the king's magic. Luckily, we only need to take out his 2 companions, who are quickly taken care of after we buffed our attack with Kasha. Once we arrive in Martira, we get our new main quest, but since we need to wait for the next sandstorm to arrive, we still have a couple of days to kill. We unlock the teleport feature, kick off the side quest in order to unlock Alonso, grab all other side quests, and are then off to the Imp Stand where we have to battle the king and a couple of his companions. The Godborns are neutral to everything, so we throw a couple of Slumber Thorns to put them to sleep in order to mitigate the incoming damage, while Hulkenberg draws in the enemy's attacks. This works pretty well, and it's only a couple of turns until all enemies are down and the side quest is completed. We also head back into the catacombs for another side quest, and this one is a bit trickier since we're still trying to get through dungeon segments by spending as little MP as possible, which unfortunately is not so easy here with the Gelatinos that can only be properly damaged with Cyclo. Luckily, we have gotten some accessories with tier 1 elemental spells that we can put on the other characters as well, since Protagonist would be the only party member able to deal damage otherwise. Due to this, the party is already down by half of their MP once we reach the boss Catablick. The adds are weak to both light and strike, so we can easily generate press turns and quickly take them down. The boss itself is a little trickier since he likes to inflict the party with Hex, and with it only being weak to light, there isn't all that much we can do since it repels all physical attacks. Towards the end, we have to throw a couple of MP healing items since Protagonist is all out of MP, but otherwise the battle is not that big of an issue, and we beat it a few turns later. With that, it is now time to return to the main story, so we hop into the Gauntlet Runner and head towards the giant Sandworm's nest. Before we get there though, we are interrupted by Katharina, who wants to battle the party. Unfortunately for her, she's quickly taken care of thanks to her fire weakness, and we continue on until we get attacked by another human. This was also the point where I wished I would have gotten more Igniter coverage earlier, since the enemy is only weak to ice attacks, something that we can't cover at all at the moment. Luckily, this is not a big problem, as our regular attacks deal big amounts of damage once we got our attack buffed up a little. A 4-hit slicer does around 500 damage in total, and with Cyclo also doing over 300, it's only a couple of turns until we are done and get swallowed by the enemy. Inside the Sandworm's belly, we grab all the items on the way and then battle another Sandworm. This one likes to summon Gelatinos, and considering we can't properly attack them, I figured it would be smarter to take the boss down first. Unfortunately, I forgot that the Gelatinos like to use Burning Fog, which hits all enemies, and thanks to the Seeker archetype still being weak to fire, this is giving us a lot of problems rather quick. And while it did look like Lady Luck is on our side as we take out the boss on the following turn and get lucky enough to get 2 lifesteals instead of another Burning Fog, the last enemy barely survives the following turn and then wipes the protagonist, and since I was smart enough to forget to stack up on revival items, I decided to reload the battle since I wanted the entire party to get experience from this one. On the next attempt, I decided to throw an ice chunk with the protagonist, and then follow up with Cyclo, which is usually enough to get rid of one of the adds, while Stroll and Hulkenberg try to focus on the main boss. This strategy works much better, and once the adds are down, the fight becomes much more manageable, and we can easily take out the boss on the following turn. In the Sandworm's nest, we have the battles against Heisme next, though those are more scripted than anything considering you can easily tell which one the real one is. The sand throw is a little annoying, but nothing that could get us in trouble, and once we beat him, he joins the party and we finally got a full set of 4 members going forward. We now have 3 physical focused party members, with only the protagonist being able to put out decent magical damage, which basically confirms that it was the right call to go magic on him. Once we're back in Martira, we go through a couple of more cutscenes, Heisme awakens to his archetype, and we are ready to head into Major Dungeon number 2. Thanks to the party's archetypes being maxed for a while already, we accumulated a lot of Hero's Leaf of Light, so we can immediately max Heistma's archetype as well. We also returned to Grand Dread during Sales Day to finally buy an Ice Igniter. We got more than enough money, and the last time we almost paid the price for not having one, so we want to make sure to get some elemental coverage onto the party. Before we continue on with the next major dungeon though, we do a couple of side quests first, starting with the Man-Eater's Grotto where we have to battle 2 rock worms, and this is the reason why we grabbed the Igniter early on, since those are also weak to ice. The accuracy debuff from Sandstorm is annoying, but overall not a big deal breaker. Hulkenberg once again tries to draw the majority of enemy attacks in. Unfortunately, they also know Fire Breath, so not only is protagonist taking a lot of damage, the enemies also get an additional turn because of it. Luckily we stacked up on healing items and can recover somewhat well. Mage Hail takes a lot of MP, so unfortunately protagonist ran out of magic, but after a quick heal, we were able to finish the enemies off. MP healing items are rather rare, so we want to try to conserve them as much as possible, but on rare occasions like this, I think it's fine if we use 1 or 2 of them. With that out of the way, it is time to continue on with the main story as we head into Creece Castle. This is also the first instance where we battle mimics. While those are pretty nice since we can still blast waters, they are rather hard to beat since the only thing they are weak to is light, something that we can barely cover with our current setup, so generating press turns is not that easy. And to make matters even worse, the mimics love to spam Sleepy Air, which can potentially put the entire party to sleep. But that's not everything. Crushing Blow is an incredibly strong AoE attack that does pretty big damage as well, and with party members potentially being asleep, this not only means that they always get critted, but it also gives the enemy another press turn. It does take quite a couple of attempts, but eventually we can get the mimic down, though we do take quite some damage, and if you remember, MP conservation is still one of the most important things to do. The castle is much shorter than the Cathedral, so ideally we want to get everything done within a day to get as much free time as possible. Luckily the party's level is still relatively high for the area we are in, so we can beat a lot of enemies on the overworld without having to spend too many resources. Another good thing is that there aren't any real mini-boss fights in here. We do have the jail segment later on where we need to free the remaining party members, but due to our high level, we can wipe the majority of enemies on the overworld and don't have to engage in actual combat. The only battle we have to do is against Chimera, who's weak to wind attacks, so by stunning it first, we can take it down without getting damaged. And that is pretty much the dungeon already. Like mentioned, this one is quite a bit shorter than the previous one, so we are already on our way to the next major boss fight against Homo Jaluso. The enemy has no weakness, so again we start off the battle by buffing our attack and then go to work with the party. The boss loves to spam Deafening Din, which not only deals AoE damage to the party, but also reduces everybody's defense by 1 stage. Thanks to the Igniters, we got Mage Devotion on our protagonist, which is basically our only means of healing the entire party. Hulkenberg tries to draw in as many attacks as possible, while Stroll and Heist may mostly deal damage to the boss. Knight's Proclamation is especially important to draw in the boss's stare attacks since those inflict daze, which we really don't want on anybody attacking since it greatly reduces the party member's accuracy. When the boss uses focused aim, we put everybody in the back row and guard to reduce the damage of jumping Plata. In order to renew the Matsuru Kasha, we also occasionally cure the daze on Hulkenberg, though the boss usually reapplies it rather soon afterwards again. We get an unlucky crit which leads to Hulkenberg getting wiped, but this time we actually have revival medicines and can recover just fine. Overall, we're making decent progress, but we're getting to the point where the first party members are slowly starting to run out of MP. The fact that the boss uses Soul Scream for another 4 turns which wipe Hulkenberg yet again don't make things any easier either, but recovery luckily isn't so bad. Overall, we're struggling quite a bit though, even more so considering that the boss gets a 2500 HP healed by the Queen once in battle. As far as I know, you can theoretically skip that, but we don't do enough damage to beat it before that happens, so we have to go through those extra HP as well. Soul Scream is basically a guaranteed wipe for Hulkenberg, but the boss is getting rather low on HP, so we should be able to do this. A couple of more turns are enough, and with basically no MP left, we're able to take down the second major boss of the game and solve the mystery of the missing children. Needless to say though, this was much trickier compared to the first boss battle early on. With the party's MP basically at 0 towards the end of the battle, we ran into a lot of issues, but we managed to still pull through and can continue on with the game now. Since there is still some downtime until the main story continues, we can do some other things in the meantime, like doing side quests for example. So we head for the abandoned tomb next. On the way there, we also run into Godard's Gauntlet Runner, but luckily he is much weaker than the boss we just fought. Just buff our attack, debuff his accuracy, and make sure he wastes his turns, and he's already down a couple of turns later. In the abandoned tomb, we have to battle some more mimics, though with the levels we have gained in the meantime, those have become a little easier. The sleep can still be very annoying, but we're taking far less damage compared to earlier, and considering that side quests are usually rather short, we don't need to be all too conservative about spending our party's MP. Speaking of mimics, this is also our dungeon boss here, as we have to battle a huge mimic to finish this segment off. Just like the other mimics, it is weak to light and basically has the same gimmicks, trying to put the party to sleep to hit critical hits after. Man, with the amount of mimics we have to go through, it probably would have been really smart to buy some anti-sleep accessory, but I never claimed to be very efficient when doing those challenges, so there's that. Anyways, we definitely want to get a successful steal with Heisme here, as the mimic carries the Crescent Medal accessory, which recovers MP every turn in battle, so with our MP management being rather tight, this is an incredibly useful accessory to have. We also use shield arts on Hulkenberg again to decrease the enemy's hit rate, though this doesn't seem to make that much of a difference overall. It takes a couple of attempts until we get lucky enough with the boss not constantly spamming sleep, and with that the battle is not too bad anymore. Just spam light attacks, decrease the enemy's accuracy, and heal up until the battle is over, and because we seem to be on a roll at the moment, we also get another Crescent Medal reward as a drop from the boss. I am not sure what the chances of a rare drop are, but considering we don't have Lucky Find or any other means to increase our chances, I guess we got really lucky. That being said, we return to town where we kick off the next couple of follower links, starting with Barton. This one is especially important as ranking up his link to level 4 will reduce the incoming damage the party takes drastically if everybody's in the back row. Considering that we will probably go with a party mostly consisting of mages going forward, this is going to increase our survivability quite a bit as well. With the abandoned tube finished, we can now also start off Alonso's follower link, which is going to give us access to some incredibly useful accessories down the line. We also head back to Grand Trad to work on Maria's link as well. Not only will her passive increase the experience gained by the party, but her rank 4 ability will also make cooking on the Gauntlet Runner not take up any time, so we definitely want to get that quickly. We continue the bonds with our other followers as well, and also work on our royal virtues, since we pretty much need all of them for certain follower ranks later on. Once free time is over, we continue on with the game's main story and head to Brilehaven next. Thanks to Maria's rank 4 ability, we can now start cooking on the Gauntlet Runner without wasting any extra time. Like mentioned in the rules, the Sublime Spoonful is banned, but everything else is fine to create. At the moment, we don't really have a lot of ingredients yet, but some of those will be really useful later on, especially the Cursed Love Ballad, which heals the entire party's MP for 100. Otherwise, we don't really do anything important on the way to Brilehaven, as we mostly focus on our royal virtues by reading books or hanging out with party members during evenings. We also have another confrontation with Katharina, who is still weak to fire. Her damage is not really anything to talk about, and with the weakness hits, we can generate enough press turns to easily take her out in 2 turns. Once we reach Brilehaven, we can also visit the mysterious old man to exchange the golden beetles we have picked up on the way until now. For 12 beetles, we get the Venomvart charm as a reward, which negates all physical status ailments. This is especially useful for Hulkenberg, since she oftentimes is on the receiving end of various ailments due to her being able to draw attacks in with Knight's Proclamation. We get invited to Louise's ship after the happenings in Brilehaven, and with that we're technically off into the next major dungeon. Before we head there though, we pick up a couple of new side quests on the way, and then head towards the Tomb of Lament, where we have to battle Fatalik. The boss repels all elements except light that he is weak to. Luckily, he is also weak to strike and neutral to all other physical damage, so once we buffed our attack, we can go to work. The boss also summons a Chimera which is weak to winds, so we can deal big damage with Cyclo while focusing on the boss with the other party members. The Chimera is down rather quickly, and we can take on our attacks to the main boss until it's down as well. Nothing big to mention about this fight for the most part. We continue on towards the Forsaken Tower next, but before we get there, we once again run into another candidate on the way, as we have to go up against Raja this time, who also comes with 2 ads by his side. Raja is weak to dark, so after buffing our attack with Martira, we can deal good damage with Heismei while the other party members either attack or heal up. Raja likes to decrease the entire party's attack, which is a little annoying, but nothing all too bad. The battle automatically ends once we beat Raja, so we just completely ignore his companions and focus on him until he's down. And because fighting candidates is fun, we have another battle with Katharina coming up right after. I think most of you know the drill by now. Katharina is still weak to fire damage, so after buffing our attack, we can deal good damage to her. This time around, she got some new tricks up her sleeve though. Bolt Bird Fist actually deals a decent amount of damage to the party, and with Stroll and Heismei both being weak to electricity, this gets us into decent amounts of trouble. Luckily, I noticed that her attacks can be drawn by Hulkenberg, in which case she stops using Bolt Bird Fists and only focuses on Cold Iron Flagellation, which can be mitigated much easier, and with that, we can take her down just a few turns later. Once we reach the Forsaken Tower, we have to battle Orgas at the top. As always, we open up the battle with Martira and decrease the enemy's accuracy with shield arts. The boss unfortunately likes to use Warcry, which decreases both attack and defense by a stage, and the follow-up Slam Shadow deals big damage to the party. Ideally, we want the enemy to miss one or several party members due to the decreased accuracy, which makes things quite a bit easier, even though it's somewhat reliant on good luck. When it gets lower on HP, it will also start using Heat Riser and Charge, at which point we want to use Phantom Tracer on Heismei to dispel the buffs. Unfortunately, in the first attempt the attack missed, because at its core, this game is still inheriting the good old SMT luck, and we get wiped after. At this point, I remembered that I got the Enfeeble Igniter in Grand Threat earlier, which comes with an attack debuff on it, so we equipped that on Stroll and walked back into the battle. Having an AoE attack debuff option is huge, but unfortunately it comes with the costly price of 48 MP, so we need to be very careful not to spam it all too much. With the attack debuff, the incoming damage becomes quite a bit more manageable, and thanks to the Dekaja hitting this time around, we can also prevent the big attack from happening. The boss is rather tanky, but with those strategies we can control the battle rather well, and after a while the enemy is down, and we leave the Forsaken Tower for now and head towards Gracia Forest next. Here we go up against Kakastas, who is only weak to Pierce. With Jump Thrust, we can not only generate additional press turns, but also lower the enemy's defense in the process, so in combination with Martira we deal good damage to the enemy. Since we have no means to increase our defense, Peck of Death is going to wipe someone eventually, but we can easily bring them back and then finish off the enemy shortly afterwards. We head to the Forsaken Tower one more time, but only to battle another rival gauntlet runner that's on the way, with the battle against Lina. As per usual, we open up by buffing our attack and debuff the enemy's accuracy, which is a good idea since Lina likes to attack with electricity, which 2 of our party members are weak against. Lina herself is weak against ice, so thanks to the Igniter we can generate press turns and also deal additional damage with the rest of our attacks. Again, it's only a few turns until the battle is won yet again, and we return back to town. We work on a couple of more follower links, and are then off into the next major dungeon of the game, though I wouldn't even call it major considering Luis's Gauntlet Runner is a rather short segment. Here we have to go through a couple of his guards, starting with Xant. This dungeon has a special gimmick in the sense that we need to complete all mini-boss battles within 3 turns to avoid getting caught and gaming over. This means that we basically go balls to the wall on our attack and completely ignore all incoming damage. Xant is neutral to all elements, so we buff our attack with Martira and then throw out everything we got, and while it got a little hairy towards the end, we managed to beat him within the turn limit on the very first try. For the next part, we can theoretically choose between two paths and only have to battle one sergeant, but considering that this dungeon is rather short anyways, and we can use the extra experience, I decided to battle them both. We start off with Glacom, who once again is neutral against all damage. With Knight's Proclamation, we can easily draw in all attacks to make sure he only focuses on Hulkenberg, and then just go to work until we easily get him down within the turn limit. Up next is Seba, who has a rather special gimmick attached to him. While he is technically weak against all physical attacks, he always opens up the battle by using Tetrakarn to put up a physical shield, so he's all about stalling the party out for the 3 turns. Unfortunately for him, the Seeker archetype has access to Tetra Break, so we can easily dispel the shield and then go all out on damage, generating a lot of press turns in the process. Our physical damage isn't necessarily the highest, so it got a little close towards the end, but we managed to pull through and beat him as well. This leaves only one sergeant remaining as we battle Salva and Cabio next. Cabio is weak to electricity, while Salva is weak against pierce attacks, both of which we have troubles covering, so additional press turns are not going to be a big thing in this battle. Again, we only had 3 turns in total to beat them, so we open up by throwing Thunderstones at Cabio to generate press turns and not waste any actions when we set up Matsurukasha. Since we can't really care too much about healing in this, we needed a couple of attempts until we get lucky enough where the enemies spread out the damage between the party members evenly, so nobody goes down from their attacks. Once Salva is down, the incoming damage is easily manageable, and after throwing some more Thunderstones, we're able to put Cabio down as well and finish the last battle in this dungeon. Since this is a very story heavy segment, there is no real final boss for now, so we just leave and have to wait for the story to advance. We still got about a week of free time left, and since we have unlocked the Coliseum already, we're starting to get our ranks up. We can only make it up to Silver 2, since one of those fights requires all characters to equip the Brawler archetype, which we obviously can't do, but there are a couple of useful rewards until we get there, so we want to make sure to complete those ranks that we can. We also continue working on our followers and unlock Barton's rank 4 during this. Like mentioned earlier, his rank 4 passive ability gives us a huge defense boost in combat when all party members are in the back row. Considering we will mostly work with the mages going forward, this is definitely something that is going to be a big help. Once waiting time is over, we continue on with the story where we try to sneak into Louise's chamber to steal the formula, find out that Tuna is actually on our side, she awakens to her archetype, and we have to battle Glodell and Hector with only a 2 party members set up. Tuna by default has the Seeker mask equipped, so she also has access to wind attacks, which comes in very handy since Hector is weak to wind. We also equip the Light Igniter on our protagonist to hit Glodell's weakness and generate additional press turns. Once Hector is down, we can fully focus on Glodell, and the battle is over relatively fast. I know this is supposed to be an easier fight since you only got access to a 2 party member setup, but even in this challenge, this was way easier than it should have been. Glodell gets wiped by the King's magic, and Tuna joins the party. Now, as most of you may know, the Masked Dancer works a little different compared to other archetypes, as we can get masks to change our elemental affinities and attacks. Since we need the Akademia for that though, this is not an option in our challenge, so Tuna will be stuck to either her default setup or the Seeker one, depending on whether we equip the mask or not. Nura's modified the Gauntlet Runner, so we can now sail the seas, and with that we're off into Vircha Island. On the way there, the party gets attacked by a big sea creature, and we got the next boss fight against Homo Sabara coming up. As you might have noticed, we have replaced Stroll in our starting setup with Tuna. Stroll literally only has weak slash attacks that are going to fall off more and more the further we get into the game, and Tuna actually has good coverage with strong fire attacks and potential wind attacks in case we equip the mask. She's also definitely the biggest DPS in this battle since she does huge damage to all enemy parts with Crimson Flame. Other than that, we once again buff our attack with Matsurukasha and have Hulkenberg draw attacks in with Knight's Proclamation. The main part of the boss is weak to electricity, so with the Igniter and Protagonist, we can attack all boss parts while also generating some press turns during it. Once the tentacles are down, we can focus our attacks on the main boss, and while they do respawn after 2 turns, we can just take them down again. Random Strike usually doesn't do a ton of damage, but unfortunately it crit Heisme and wiped him, but we can easily bring him back and heal up again. It got a little dicey at the end when Heisme went down again, and the party was generally on low HP, but since the boss was pretty much dead already, I decided not to heal up, but go for damage, and we managed to beat the enemy on the following turn. With that, we reach Virgia Island and get our next main quest, though before we do that, we grab all the new side quests first. We also buy accessories at the shop here since they sell boots that have passive elemental dodges on them. Even though it's not a guarantee, every bit of potential weakness hit avoiding helps, so for now those will definitely be a decent upgrade. After we're done shopping, we're back to the Gauntlet Runner to complete the first couple of side quests, starting with the Orb Wise Path. Here we have to battle Kakastor's, who is weak to fire, and that's all you need to know about this battle. Tuna has incredibly strong fire attacks, while Protagonist and Heisme can support him with Mage Fire from the Igniter. The enemy's attacks are not all too bad, and with our overwhelming fire damage, it doesn't stand a chance, and we're finished sooner than later. Back in town, we do a couple of more follower links, more specifically Maria, to get her to rank 7 to unlock the increased experience boost from combat. We're not nearly as overleveled as earlier in the challenge, so a bit of extra experience surely won't hurt. With that, we're now ready to head into the next major dungeon as we make our way towards the Dragon Temple. At the entrance, we are already greeted by the first mini-boss Alento. Again, we have an enemy that is weak to fire attacks, so just like before, we attack with our Igniters as well as Tuna while also buffing our attack with Matarukasha. The boss likes to put up an HP recover, but luckily we do more than enough to easily outdamage it, and a few turns later it is already down and we continue on in the dungeon where we run into Yufa, who is not just usable as a party member yet, but that is going to change in a short bit. We run into the next mini-boss in Homo Flamo, who is only weak to electricity, so while generating press turns is a bit of an issue, we can still deal decent damage with our other attacks as well. Tuna has the Igniter for Mage Devotion equipped to heal up everybody, since the enemy deals decent damage to the party as well. The mini-boss will also buff its attack and defense, but thanks to Phantom Bracer we can easily remove that, and a few attacks later the enemy is down and we can continue on. One enemy I want to specifically mention here is the Psyocrow, which appears in the later parts of the dungeon. It is a rather bulky enemy, but the important thing about it is that we can steal Evil Eye Talismans here. Those debuff all enemy stats by one stage, so basically the debilitate spell, and those can be incredibly useful going forward, since we have no way to get access to debilitate otherwise, so we want to make sure to get a steal in every time we run into one of those. And since that is all there is to this dungeon, I say we jump forwards to the moment where Yufa awakens to her archetype, and we have to battle Homo Margo and the dragon now. The human is weak to wind, and with 3 characters having access to wind thanks to Yufa joining, we can generate a lot of press turns in this battle. Of course, we once again buff our attack with Matarukasha, and have Haltenberg draw enemy attacks in. Yufa's Eagle Lion attack has the advantage that it additionally also comes with an attack debuff, so we can easily fully debuff both enemies' attack, which makes the incoming damage become negligible. When Homo Margo gets low on HP, it will sap HP off of the dragon, but this is no issue as we can just continue on like before, and with the amount of weakness hits we can throw at the boss, it's only a matter of a few more turns until both enemies are down and the next major dungeon is completed. But we're not fully done yet, since we head back to the village to battle Homo Margo one more time. This time around, the fight has a gimmick attached to it though. The boss will regularly switch affinities every few turns throughout the battle, so we have to watch out for what its current element is. Buffs and debuffs are also rather useless in this one, as the boss will just negate them with the Kasha and the Kunda. Haltenberg once again draws attacks in, and we keep on doing damage against the boss. If we get an element that we can't cover via spells, we usually just throw out a couple of elemental items and wait for the boss to switch into the next element. And that is basically all there is to it. Just keep on like this, and the boss is down for good after a while. With that, we got some more downtime coming up again. Yufa, just like Tuna earlier, has some more special requirements in terms of advancing the summoner, but since we need the Akademia for that as well, she's going to be stuck with her default setup as well. With that out of the way, I'd say we get back into combat. We start off our side quest part by heading into the Scoundrel's Hold first. On the way there, we stop by in Ligno to buy a resist electricity weapon for Tuna, as well as some accessories that greatly increase the evasion to a single element, in order to somewhat cover for the party members' weaknesses. Hulkenberg is the first follower that gets their ranking maxed, and once we reach the dungeon, we have to battle another Psychra boss, who comes with 2 more adds. Just like in the dungeon before, it is once again weak to wind attacks, so we can easily generate press turns when also taking out the companions thanks to Yufa's AoE attacks. Just a few turns later, the boss is down and we are already done again, so we continue on towards the Land of Ceremony next. This one is especially important as it's required to unlock Yufa's follower link, so we want to make sure to get that one out of the way quickly. Here we have to battle another human as we take on Homo Pento. Again, we have an easy time generating press turns, as the enemy is weak against fire, which both Tuna and Yufa are big fans of. The boss likes to summon skeleton warriors, but since both big fire attacks and our mages are AoE, we can easily take the adds out while still doing damage to the boss. Again, it's only a matter of a couple of turns until the boss is down and we unlock rank 1 of Yufa's follower link. The last side quest remaining for now is the Spire of the Blind Faith, so we head there next to battle Leogron. Just like Homo Pento before it, this enemy is also weak to fire attacks, so our mages once again throw out big damage, while Hulkenberg draws enemy attacks in and protagonist buffs the party's attack. The boss likes to buff all its stats with Heat Riser, but luckily Yufa's Dragon God fire attack that we use anyways also comes with an additional Dekasha, so we already got the perfect solution in place. I know I sound like a broken record at this point, but it's only a few more turns of attacking the enemy with fire damage and we are done here as well. I gotta admit, I am surprised by how well we've been doing in this challenge so far. Tuna and Yufa joining the party definitely helped to increase our damage since they start off with stronger attacks already, but even before that we made pretty good progress for the most part. We head back to Nundo one more time because there is another rival gauntlet runner on the way that we still need to battle with Jin. Jin is neutral to everything, but this doesn't matter as he doesn't have a lot of HP, so even without generating additional actions, we only need 3 turns to take him out. We go out with Yufa during the island festivities in order to get a pretty nice weapon for her, and once that is done, it's time to continue on with the main story, so we hop onto the gauntlet runner and head towards Altaberry Heights, where the party plans to assassinate Louis during Tuna's concert. While we only have Yufa and the protagonist available for this segment, I don't think we need to dive into anything here. The enemies are rather weak and there is no mini-boss on the way or anything, so we skip forward to the point where we spear Louis and then have to battle him right after. Yufa will start the battle by debuffing Louis's attack, while Hulkenberg tries to draw attacks in. Louis has a tendency to attack the protagonist in this battle, but Hulkenberg at least is able to consistently draw in his debuff attacks, so that is already a huge help. Other than that, it's the same as always. Hulkenberg serves as tank, protagonist buffs the party's attack, and our girls are responsible for putting the hurt on Louis. The enemy has a rather simple AI pattern, so we're not really having a lot of issues, and after a bit, we deal the final blow and beat Louis. At least for now. Louis is dead, but not really because Sorba isn't actually dead either, but Forden dies, then Fidelio dies, and Basilio awakens to his archetype and joins the party. We max him with the tons of hero leaves that we have laying in our inventory, and then head to the Royal Academy ruins to fight Rella and another dragon. The Ice Dragon, as expected, is weak to fire damage, so we once again generate press turns with our mages while buffing our attack with Matsurukasha. The dragon likes to use Icy Breath, which has a chance to freeze party members, so the ailments are already an issue here. To top it off, Rella also likes to put up an elemental barrier, making it even harder to hit the boss. Roar is another rather nasty attack since it decreases all our party's stats by 2 stages, but luckily we can use a reset talisman to negate those. Putting debuffs on the enemy is also only partially useful, as Rella will use the Kunda to negate those as well. The incoming damage for the most part isn't even that big of a problem, but the combination of status ailments, debuffs, and the elemental barrier make it rather hard to get some damage onto the boss. For some reason, I also completely forgot that we have items to break magic barriers, so we're making this harder on ourselves than it actually needs to be. Eventually, we managed to get the boss down, though only for Rella to fully heal it, so we have to go through the entire 7000 HP one more time. The good thing though is that with Rella down now, there is no more issue when it comes to elemental barriers, so we can fully unleash our fire attacks and generate more press turns that way. The boss will now buff its attack by 2 stages regularly, but thanks to the Dragon God attack, we can negate that while also dealing more fire damage. Phase 2 in general is easier compared to Phase 1 just because we don't have to worry about Rella any longer, and it's just a few more turns until the enemy is down. Rella sacrifices herself to break the Prince's curse, and we have some more downtime until the next showdown with Louise, which means more side quests coming up. We continue working on our follower links, and then head to the Everfrost forest next, where we have to battle the Ice Beast and the Spear Soldier. The Ice Beast, unsurprisingly, is weak to fire, so we once again use that to our advantage. You also might have noticed that we have replaced Hulkenberg with Basilio in the meantime. Knight's Proclamation was a great help until now, but Basilio comes with Warcry, which decreases all enemies' attack and defense by 1 stage, so overall I think this is probably more useful considering Hulkenberg's only useful offensive attack was Shield Arts, which decreased the enemy's evasion. Just like Rella before, the soldier likes to put up a wall on the beast, but luckily this time around I remembered that we have Mindbreak Hammers, so we can easily dispel that and continue on. The Spear Soldier will eventually sacrifice himself to fully heal the Ice Beast, but with both fire and wind weaknesses, the boss stands no chance and is down soon after. We get Alonso to rank 7 next, which is especially important since it unlocks a ton of new really useful accessories at the magic shop. But before we get those, we rank up Barden to rank 7 as well, which also includes the battle against Homoputera, and my god is this an annoying battle. The enemy's only weakness is ice, something that we can barely cover, but this is not even the biggest problem. The boss loves to spam Sandstorm, which lowers the entire party's evasion, and once it gets lower on HP, it also starts digging itself into the ground, which makes it untargetable for the following turn. While we can easily clear the debuffs with reset talismans, the digging down is not only super annoying, but also regularly screws up our turn order when it comes to debuffing the boss. The battle itself is not super hard, but this alone makes this way more annoying than it needs to be. Luckily we're still doing very good damage, while the incoming damage is not a big issue, so after a while we're able to take the enemy down and save Martira once again. During nighttime, we now head to the magic shop where we buy 2 very specific accessories. The Utilitarian's Manual recasts the cost of synthesis skills by 1 press turn, so we can now spam all kinds of stuff while only using a single one of them. Since I'm not quite sure how much I'm going to need going forward, we buy 3 of those for now. We also get ourselves a Dodger Ring here. This one has the ability that it kills all enemy turns in case the party member wearing it manages to dodge an attack, so this alone could be incredibly useful going forward for some of the later battles. We also grab all accessories with resist elements on them, since we now finally have a way to cover all party members' weaknesses in theory. We also buy the enhanced elemental igniters in Grand Threat, as well as the 2 with charge and concentrate on them to further boost our damage down the line. With all that out of the way, we return to combat once again as we head towards the Tower of Insolence next to battle Psychropus. The enemy is weak to wind attacks, so by now you know the drill. Attack with weakness hits, generate press turns, buff our attack, and go to work. The enemy summons doppelgangers of himself, so we need to try and beat them both within the same turn to win the battle, but luckily our damage is pretty good, and Yufa's AoE attack damages both enemies evenly, so it's not a big issue and we're done soon after. With another tower completed, we return to Grand Threat to once again battle Louise. We have covered all our party members' weaknesses with accessories, so theoretically a crit is the only thing that can give Louise additional press turns. We also brought back Hulkenberg into the party to once again draw the enemy attacks in, which just like in the first encounter against him works incredibly well. We're still having quite some issues though, as Louise really likes to crit party members with Spatial Slice, so more often than not, we get really close to lose one or several party members. I assume this is his backup AI pattern in case he can't hit a weakness, so it looks like one way or another, he is getting his additional turns in either way. Louise is neutral to all elements, so we usually use Hellfire Dance to create a weakness, and then go for big damage with Tuna. The battle in general is not a big issue though until he drops below half HP, at which point he will gain 4 additional actions every turn. Hulkenberg tries to get some shield arts in every now and then to decrease the boss's accuracy and force him to miss attacks, therefore losing 2 turns every time this happens. This works really well, and since we don't actually have to deplete all of Louise's HP in this battle, it's not all too long until we're done again. Also, the footage you're seeing here was actually my second fight against him. Not that I lost in the first one, but I accidentally stopped my recording earlier while taking a break to save space on my HDD, and then of course forgot to restart it again. Luckily this fight is not a problem for the most part, so it wasn't a big deal having to do it one more time. That being said, we are now ready to get the prince, so we head to the ancient Elden Sanctum, only to find that the prince has already passed. We find out that the protagonist is actually a distant relative from Final Fantasy X's Titus, then merge with the prince, and have to refight Homo Gorlio on the way out, and here is something that I was not prepared for. The prince shop usually gets unlocked without having to go to the Akademia first, but since we never completed Moore's request, we have no way to change archetypes outside of the Akademia. Luckily, it just so happens that the prince archetype gets auto-equipped once you enter the boss fight, and this changes the entire endgame dramatically. As far as I remember, I immediately changed into the prince in my casual playthrough once I unlocked it, so I didn't know that it would have gotten auto-equipped for this boss fight anyways. Either way, we now have access to probably the most powerful archetype in the entire game, and Homo Gorlio is going to feel that. Our new means of damage is going to be Royal Sword, and some of you may go, wait, isn't that a physical skill? You have a magic build, and yeah, you're right about that. Luckily, the skill's power is based off either strength or magic, depending on which stat is higher, so even with a magic build, we can do full damage with the attack. The skill itself is still counted as physical damage, so we need to head into the front row in order to deal full damage, but this is still way better than anything I was expecting for the late game. Anyways, with Royal Sword, we can easily take care of the boss and continue on. Before we head into Skybound Avatar for the next major dungeon of the game though, there is a ton of other stuff we still need to do, so after working on some more follower links, we head towards Rudolph's Runner first to kick off the last couple of candidate battles. The ads are weak to wind, so we use that to generate press turns while debuffing the enemy's attack and defense with Warcry and Basilio. With Royal Sword, we can easily deplete Rudolph's HP, and we're done with this battle within 2 turns. We continue on in the abandoned path, where we run into Loveless on the way, but just like Rudolph, he stands no chance against the prince. After buffing all of protagonist's stats, we throw out more Royal Swords, and needless to say, this one didn't take too long either. On the abandoned path, we have to battle Ordemus, and you might have guessed it, buffing and Royal Sword take care of things here as well. I think at this point it's safe to say that we're going to focus on putting out damage with the protagonist, while the rest of the party is supporting by either buffs or debuffs, or generating additional press turns if there is a weakness to be hit. I was expecting the endgame to become a lot tougher with only the default archetypes available, but the game automatically putting on the prince is going to make things quite a bit easier. We continue on to Mount Volcano in order to be able to continue Euphos follower link while we have to battle Hyperic. The strategy, you might have guessed it already, is buffing the protagonist and throwing out Royal Swords while the rest of the party plays support. Again, we only need 2 turns and we're done again. Same in the last battle against Milo, who is also weak to both fire and wind, so this one is already over before Milo even gets a chance to damage the party. We continue on in the manner of the Ascendant, where we run into Kokomo Roads. This one is only weak to ice, but all of that really doesn't matter though, because like always, Royal Sword for the win. Pack of Death wipes Yupa because we got no defense buff up, but other than that there is nothing to worry about and we're done soon after. We head to the next Gauntlet Runner battle against Shin, and yeah, I'm only showing this for completionist sakes, because you all know what the strategy is. Buff, Royal Sword, chip damage with the other party members, and be gone Jin. We head to the Disgraced Ruins next, where we have to battle a couple of bandits. The chief is weak against light, so we use Radiance for press turns and to take care of the ads, and then Royal Sword our way to victory yet again. This is only part 1 of the boss fight though, as we have to battle Homo Sandro right afterwards. Luckily, Royal Sword deals even more damage to human enemies, so we're done here again after 2 turns as well. Alright, I would say that was enough side quests for now. It's time we head into Skybound Avatar next. Here we have to battle a couple of mini bosses from previous dungeons, starting with the 2 Homo Orelons. With the boss being human, obviously Royal Sword is the best way to damage the enemies. Not that I would have been using anything else, but still. The enemy is also weak to electricity, so we can occasionally throw some elemental items to generate additional press turns, and then go to work with Royal Sword until the enemy is down. Up next is Chimera, which is weak to both wind and ice, so we use that to generate press turns, put out the damage with Royal Sword and get the enemy down. The constant heal by the mini-boss is annoying, but nothing that we can't out-damage, and a few turns later, we are already done again. After going through the mage, which confused the hell out of me in my casual playthrough until I realized that there is a pattern to it, we have to battle Leographon. This one is a little tankier, but still, Royal Sword with some chip damage from the other party members is all we need to get the mini-boss down. Up next is Goptitron, who is weak to ice, so we generate some additional press turns with the Igniter, while debuffing the enemy and taking it out with, you might have guessed it, Royal Sword. With that, we are up against the major boss of this segment, as we have to refight Sorba, who has now become part human, and this makes the battle even easier. Royal Sword for the win. Honestly, Sorba at this point is a pushover. His attacks with everybody in the back row barely deal any damage, and once we finish setting up, we move protagonist to the front and just annihilate Sorba with Royal Sword. Before we leave the dungeon though, I want to give a quick shout out to the last corridor here with the cat just before the door, with the safe spot there, and the game asking you if you are ready to continue. I was 100% certain that we're going to battle Louise when I did my casual playthrough, so I pumped a ton of MP items into my party, only to get baited by a cutscene with no additional fights coming up after. Nice troll, Atlas. Anyways, we have the last bits of downtime now before heading into the final dungeon, so we complete the last couple of follower links and are then ready to tackle the dragon side quest, starting off with the Devourer of Nations. And those battles might be the first ones in quite a while to give us problems. While the dragon mostly attacks with fire, ice and slash attacks, we're not allowed to bring any equipment that nulls or repels either of those, since the boss will go berserk otherwise. The dragon also buffs its attack by 2 stages every turn, which deals quite some damage to the party even through the back row defense buff. And if this wouldn't be bad enough, its attacks also have a chance to paralyze, burn or freeze party members, so we also have to deal with status ailments. In case we attack, we have to make sure that the protagonist moves to the back row by the end of the turn, because otherwise things like this happen and that is basically a reset, no chance to recover here. We also start throwing binding ropes to decrease the boss's accuracy in the hopes of getting a couple of dodges in. This works pretty well, and while the majority of the party still takes damage, usually at least one of them dodges the attack, so this decreases the incoming damage by quite a bit. The battle does take a while, but eventually we're able to take the dragon down and complete the first of 3 quests. Before we continue on, we head to the Masked Shopkeeper in Grand Triad, where we can now buy Evil Eye Talismans. If you remember earlier, we stole those from enemies to get access to Debilitate, but luckily we can just buy them in the endgame, though we can only grab one at a time. We also stack up on ingredients to cook some more on our way towards the dragons, and then continue on to complete Basilia's follower link by battling Venka. After the problems we had against the first dragon, this one is a very welcome change, as he easily goes down in 3 turns without any bigger issues. With that out of the way, we head towards the Spire of the Blind Faith next to battle the Devourer of Flames. The dragon mostly attacks with fire damage, and since there is no penalty for bringing null elements this time around, we put a null fire armor on both protagonist and Tuna. Just like the previous dragon, the boss loves to buff its attack while also debuffing all of our party's stats by 2 stages with Roar. Amnesty and Reset talismans are our best friends in this battle, since we definitely want to negate the buffs and debuffs before going for the attack. By far the worst part about this battle is Bewitching Blaze though, which has a high chance to charm the entire party, and that is exactly what happened on our first attempt. If this happens, it's basically game over. To add to this, the boss usually follows this up with Burn Down on the following turn, which deals quad 9 damage to every party member not immune to fire, and yeah, I don't think there is any recovery from this. The very same thing happened on the second attempt, at which point I was actually starting to check whether this is an auto hit or not, because having your entire party get chopped twice in a row sounds rather unlucky, but it looks like it might just be a high chance and not guaranteed. Since it was clear that the current strategy wouldn't work, we reload the save and make some more adjustments, namely putting our only null charm accessory on Tuna for protection. As long as we got one party member that can null the attack, they can throw a Coney Stew to cure the ailment on the entire party. As for the quad 9 fire attack, we have no other way of dodging this since we only have 2 pieces of equipment with null fire on them. I know that you can also cheese this boss by giving him a fire weakness and then repelling the attack, but unfortunately we have no means to repel any fire damage or magic attacks in general. Considering that the boss mostly uses fire attacks anyways, I eventually decided to keep both Yufa and Basilio down and just do the battle with Tuna and Protagonist since they both have null fire on them, which is probably more efficient than having to heal every turn. With Tuna also being immune to charm, this makes recovery a little easier as well, though the reduced amount of press turns certainly make it tricky to time everything properly. Protagonist is now just going to Royal Sword from the back row to chip away at the boss's HP, while Tuna either heals or negates buffs and debuffs. And while doing the battle like this takes quite a while, it is probably the easiest and safest way we can currently approach it, so we keep on going like this until the boss goes down 10 minutes later. With that out of the way, there is only one more dragon left to go, so we head to the Tower of Insolence next to battle the Devourer of Stars. And this little dragon right here has a completely different gimmick, since it literally repels everything but Almighty, which it also resists as far as I know. Luckily, as long as we can damage it with Royal Sword, we have a chance, so we get going with our usual setup. The dragon opens up the battle by casting Miasma Whirl, which sets the HP of all party members to 300. While this means that we need to watch out quite a bit more, it also means that healing up generally becomes a little easier overall. Just like the previous fight, the dragon likes to inflict status ailments, but luckily this time it's only Hex and Poison, which is way better since party members inflicted with those can still act, so we have no issues curing it unlike in the last dragon battle. Other than that, it's very similar to the previous boss. Because of the constant buff negating, we don't really do a lot of damage from the back row, but slowly and steady we're getting the dragon down. Towards the end, it got dicey a couple of times when the dragon managed to wipe 2 party members, but we were able to recover and get back into the battle. We also switched out Basilio for Heisme eventually, since the dragon loves to spam Toxin Breath, which is a dark attack, and therefore hits Basilio's weakness, giving the boss another turn. Heisme also has the Dodger's Ring on him, so we have the chance to instantly end the enemy's turn if he manages to evade an attack. Luckily the dragon is almost finished at this point anyways, so it's only a few more attacks until the last dragon is down. With that, we now head into the Dragon Temple for the final side quest of the game against Elegy of the Soul. As you may know, this enemy is basically a copy of the protagonist as it cycles through all archetypes each turn. There are also several requirements when fighting this enemy. One is that you're not allowed to bring anything that nulls or repels any element, or you get auto-wiped, as you can see here since I forgot to take off the repel ice boots from Yufa. There is also a time limit in this one similar to Persona 5, where the boss will mercy kill you if you don't do enough damage in time, but with our DPS output I don't think we have to worry all too much about that. One of the biggest advantages in this battle is that there are only very few turns where the boss can use either Dekasha or Dekonda to negate buffs and debuffs. While he does like to buff himself regularly with all kinds of stuff, not straight up negating anything is a huge upgrade over the dragon bosses that constantly messed with the party. As for the archetypes, there are several that can be really problematic if we get unlucky, like the warrior, summoner, or prince, while others are great to recover on, like knight, thief, or masked dancer. Generally though, we are hanging in pretty well and are able to get some decent damage on the enemy until we get incredibly unlucky on the second cycle warrior, where everybody but protagonist gets wiped, so yeah, there is no recovery from that one anymore. To reduce the incoming damage, we also use an igniter on Tuna to increase everybody's defense with Mage Shield Wave, but even that doesn't seem to help all too much if we get unlucky with weakness or critical hits, despite the boss being fully debuffed at most points. This especially becomes a problem once the boss gets low on HP, at which point he will always use Hero's Cry in the beginning of a turn to get another additional 4 actions. And it is at this point that the battle quickly goes downhill. We do have Basilio with the Dodger's Ring, which immediately ends the enemy's turn if he gets a dodge in, but unfortunately that doesn't seem to happen all too often, and it's not long until we're not able to withstand the incoming damage any longer. We got rather close to winning here, so I definitely think we can do this if we just get a little more luck with potential dodges towards the end. Unfortunately, the following attempt went pretty much the same, so we have to make some changes to our setup. First of all, we replaced Yufa with Heismei and equipped the Dodger's Ring on him, since he has the highest chance to evade enemy attacks thanks to his high agility. Next, we will switch the accessory on Tuna for the Career Igniter to get Mage Agility Wave. I usually prefer consistency over luck, but I feel like having high evasion is probably going to be more useful than having high defense in a fight like this. With those changes, we go back into the battle and get going one more time. The strategy is basically the same as before, though instead of buffing our defense, we lay it all in the hands of Lady Luck by maxing our evasion and hoping for some nice dodges, especially with Heismei. And this seems to work out rather well. While we still have characters occasionally going down, Heismei is doing good work dodging enemy attacks and immediately wiping the boss's turn in the process. This is especially important towards the later parts of the battle when he starts using Hero's Cry again, considering that the enemy can attack 7 times in that phase, not even counting potential additional turns from weakness or critical hits. If Heismei manages to dodge the very first attack, we can kill off the entire turn and greatly reduce the incoming damage on the party. With that, we can control the battle much better, and eventually we're able to take the boss down and complete the final side quest of the game. And that is basically all there is to it. The only thing we got left now is the final dungeon. Since we still have some days left though, we try to prepare for a little. We stack up on ingredients and spend the last couple of days on the Gauntlet Runner fishing and cooking stuff. We want to have food for full HP heals, ailment healing, finisher nulls because I'm tired of fighting random encounters at this point, as well as Ember Stews for a party-wide charge. Charge is usually not targetable, so this is the only option to get it onto our protagonist for even more damage. Once the final day approaches, we head for the Tyrant Star to end things for good. Now, there technically is the option to just completely ignore all mini-bosses and fight the enhanced version of Louise, but even though I am very confident about how this challenge went so far, I think it's safe to say that we should definitely try to weaken him before heading into the battle. Something else that not everybody might be aware of is that Nuras actually has a little shop once you get to the Tyrant Star, which is the only option in the entire game to buy unlimited amounts of MP healing items. The Magla potion only heals for 50 MP, but just being able to easily get everybody back up to full after a battle is way too good to pass on. As for the mini bosses, we have to fight every human we have fought in previous major dungeons to weaken Louise. Since they all work pretty much the same way though, we're not going to go through all of them. The strategy is always the same anyways. Buff protagonists, apply debuffs like Warcry or items, and then go to work with Royal Sword. Some of the enemies are more annoying than others, looking at you Botera and your damn digging mechanic, but none of them are really any dangerous or hard, so we just go through all 6 of them to fully weaken Louise, and with that, we are ready to head into the final battle of the game. We are at level 75, which is actually 7 levels lower than Louise, but with our strategy, that should still be enough to get through the boss, but only one way to find out. The first fight against Archdemon Louise, who by the way totally not resembles Lucifer, is relatively easy. Louise only does very little damage as long as everybody is in the back row, and with at least one party member usually dodging, we can end his turns early as well. A single royal sword is also enough to break him out of his charging stance, so there really is nothing that we have to worry about. And yeah, that is pretty much all there is to talk about for the most part. Just continue on like this until phase 1 Lewis is down. Before continuing on with phase 2 though, we get summoned to the Akademia and have to fight Moore now because he is mad that we ignored him all game long. Moore is a pushover though, and I'm not even sure if it's even possible to lose in this fight, but one way or another, he quickly goes down to a couple of royal slashes. With that, we return back to the party and then head into phase 2 of the Louise battle, which is probably the most annoying one. In this one, we have to get rid of all 3 masks, and we definitely want to start off with the Mask of Mirth, since this is the one that usually spams the Kasha and the Kunda, so getting rid of the one that negates all of our setup is definitely priority. We also make sure to buff our agility again to maximize the amount of possible dodges we can do, though with the boss constantly using the Kasha and the Kunda, this is not such an easy task. When the boss uses New Dawn Sacrifice, we have to attack the mask with the puppets in it, otherwise we focus our attacks on the Mask of Mirth to get it down quickly. Party members might go down occasionally if all boss parts focus on one character, but recovery in general isn't that hard, and we usually get back into the battle again rather quickly. If we get free turns on the other party members, we also start throwing elemental AoE items at the boss parts. The strongest ones only do 200 damage per hit, but this is going to add up over time, so it's certainly not a bad idea to get in some extra damage while trying to get the first mask down. Heisme is also once again putting in good work, dodging a lot of enemy attacks and therefore immediately ending their turn. Once the Mask of Mirth is down, the battle is basically won, since with buffs and debuffs up, the damage is much less dangerous compared to before, so we can now take out the remaining 2 masks while making sure to keep everything up throughout the rest of the battle. Since the party's current HP and MP carry over into the last fight, we want to make sure to be healed up on everybody and then take care of the last mask to transition into phase 3 and the final fight of the game. Even with his reduced state, the boss unfortunately still has access to both the Kasha and the Kunda, though he will usually only use the Kasha if he manages to get a critical or a weakness hit in, so it's even more important than before to regularly dodge attacks and end the turn early. Unfortunately, this is not always possible, and we have to start setting up everything from scratch again, just because of some bad luck from the previous turn. Generally though, the start of the battle is manageable. Geradriel's attacks are not too bad as long as we get everybody in the back row, and with constant buffing and debuffing as well as healing, the battle seems to be rather safe. Geradriel can also use a Tribe Condemned at times, which insta-kills a specific character, but just like before, we can just bring them back and then continue on. High Pressure reduces the party's actions by 1 on the following turn, which usually is not a big deal, but occasionally he likes to combo that with a Tribe Condemned, which means that on the following turn we only get 2 actions, and also need to bring back at that party member. Combine that with having to heal and buff debuff, you can see that we are running into potential issues rather quickly. Luckily the boss is starting to get low on HP, so we only need to hold out for a little longer. There was a point where I figured that I might be able to deal the final blow with the last action on the turn, but I didn't want to risk having protagonist in the front row at the end of the turn, so I decided to put him in the back, and this might have been what cost me in the end. Louise now starts using Soul Scream at the end of every turn, giving him another 4 actions, and this is where we start having major issues. Combo that with High Pressure and the Tribe Condemned, and we basically have no way to recover any longer without anybody going down yet again. We are so occupied with getting everybody back up and healing that we don't have any actions to dispel the enemy buffs and debuffs, and eventually we only have the protagonist left, at which point we have to go for a reset. While this was unfortunate, we held on really well up until that point, so I am sure that we can win the battle with our current setup. We go through the entire fight just like before, though I noticed that Geradriel started using Soul Scream much earlier in this battle compared to the previous one. I don't know what the actual mechanic behind it is, but it seems to be more than just triggered when he gets to a certain HP threshold. It might have to do something with the amount of times he gets crits and anxiety, but anyways, this time we have to deal with it for much longer. Just like before, we once again get huge problems with the amount of incoming attacks, especially if they are comboed with high pressure and the tribe condemned. This time though, we somehow manage to recover and get back into the battle thanks to an early dodge by Heismay. Since Charadrius will only use Soul Scream on his very last action each turn, we have to hope that somebody dodges the attack before it, since it will immediately end the boss's turn without giving him an opportunity to cast Soul Scream. This works decently well, and a few turns later, we're able to deal the final blow to Charadrius and successfully beat the final boss of the game with a crit nonetheless. And it was at this point that I noticed that I never used any of my charge cooking items throughout the entire battle, so we once again made this way harder than it needed to be. But anyways, that is it everybody. We beat Metaphor Refantazio without using the Akademia a single time in the entire game. And I gotta be honest with you, the Prince archetype getting auto-equipped after unlocking it is definitely the sole reason we got through the endgame without any bigger problems. Generally, I am surprised by how well even the default archetypes hold up throughout the game if you know how to approach certain bosses, but the endgame would have been much more difficult had it not been for the Prince. That being said, this was my first Metaphor Refantazio challenge, and I might do some more in the future if you guys want to see it. I actually have a couple of ideas in my head, though I'm not entirely sure if any of them are even possible. With that being said, special thanks go out to this video's top channel supporters Norel, Shirker, Matthew Frag, and Xipsalnaga, as well as all other channel members and patrons. Becoming a channel member or joining the Patreon gives you 48-hour early access to all videos among other small perks, so if you want to support the channel even more, there are plenty of ways to do so. That is all for me today. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the run as much as I did, and I hope to see all of you next time as well. Until then, take care.